Part-2 of Who Should Be Your Mom. The billionaire asked gently. His son pointed to the waitress with a smile. Clara stepped up to the iron gates of the Wells estate that Saturday morning, her tote bag slung over one shoulder and a fresh batch of muffins from Sunflower Café in her hand. The crisp autumn air carried the faint scent of baked goods, mingling with the distant aroma of fallen leaves and freshly brewed coffee from the city below. Oliver's small shadow danced across the stone pathway as he ran ahead, calling her name with a delighted squeal. "Clara, you're here. Dad said you might come early, so I saved the biggest muffin for you." Clara laughed, setting her bag down as the boy launched himself at her in a tight hug. "Saved a muffin for me, huh? I think I can handle that." She ruffled his hair, noticing how much taller he seemed each week. His energy was endless, a whirlwind that reminded her why she had agreed to this trial period in the first place. Sebastian appeared behind them, casually dressed in dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, his tie discarded for once. "Morning," he said, voice calm but with a warmth Clara hadn't noticed in the office. He reached down to ruffle Oliver's hair, and the boy immediately tugged his father toward the breakfast nook. "Come on, Dad, muffins and pancakes first." Inside, the Wells kitchen was bright and inviting, the kind of space that somehow felt luxurious without being intimidating. A marble island stretched across the room, sunlight spilling over its surface, and a vase of fresh daisies perched on the counter. Clara unpacked her muffins while Oliver carefully arranged plates, clearly taking pride in his role. "I made some pancakes, too," Oliver said, grinning, "but only the ones shaped like dinosaurs." Clara smiled, letting herself kneel beside him to help arrange the syrup. "I see you perfected the Tyrannosaurus," she said, drawing the shape with care. Oliver giggled. "He's fierce, but he's also really hungry." Sebastian leaned against the counter, observing them quietly. Clara noticed the softness in his gaze, the way he lingered on his son, proud yet tentative. "You've really settled into these mornings," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure how it would work at first." Clara glanced up, brushing a crumb off her dress. "Honestly, I wasn't sure either. But I like it. I like seeing him smile like this. And you're different than I expected, too." Her voice trailed off, unsure how to put the thought into words. Sebastian's lips curved into a half-smile. "Different, huh? I'll take that as a compliment." Breakfast was a lively affair, the small kitchen filled with the aroma of coffee and sizzling pancakes. Clara found herself laughing at Oliver's exaggerated dinosaur roars, Sebastian quietly correcting the boys' pronunciation of velociraptor, and even teasing each other about who made the best pancake shapes. By the end of it, the plates were empty, crumbs littering the marble island, and Clara felt a pang of contentment she hadn't realized she missed in her own life. After clearing the dishes, Sebastian gestured toward the living room. "How about some homework time before we start the day?" He sank into the sofa, opening a laptop for work, while Clara spread Oliver's school books across the coffee table. "Science first," Clara said, picking up a notebook. "And don't try to sneak a cookie until after your answers are done." Oliver groaned, but he settled in beside her, pencil in hand. Clara guided him through the questions patiently, explaining concepts with gentle humor, just as she had promised herself she would. No rush, no pressure, just encouragement. Sebastian occasionally glanced up from his work, noting how naturally Clara engaged with Oliver. She wasn't following a script, wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply being present. It struck him how rare that was, how refreshing it felt. Later, when homework was done, Oliver begged to play outside. Clara followed him to the small courtyard at the back, a well-kept garden with a stone fountain and scattered benches. He raced around, pointing out the leaves shaped like dinosaurs and insisting to hold a fall festival with the squirrels. Clara laughed, helping him hang tiny paper decorations on the low branches. Sebastian joined them, leaning on the railing of the courtyard balcony. "I wasn't sure how the 2-week trial would go," he admitted. "But seeing you with him, it makes me realize how much he needed someone like you." Clara glanced up, meeting his eyes for a fleeting moment. There was gratitude there, yes, but something else too, an unspoken acknowledgement of the growing bond between them. "He's special," she said softly, "and you're a devoted dad. It's clear he already has a lot of love in his life, even before I came along. Sebastian's gaze softened. It's just that I wasn't sure anyone could connect with him the way Sophia did. And yet, here you are. The afternoon passed in a blur of small joys. They baked cookies in the modern kitchen, flour dusting their hands, Oliver laughing as Clara made a mess on purpose. They read books in the sunlit reading nook, Sebastian occasionally chiming in with voices and sound effects. By evening, the house felt full, alive, yet calm in its domestic rhythm. As Clara prepared to leave, Oliver hugged her tightly. Can you come again tomorrow? And next day, too? I'll come as often as I can, she promised, feeling warmth radiate from her chest. Sebastian's voice stopped her at the doorway. Thank you, Clara, for everything today. She turned to him, feeling the weight of unspoken words between them. It's nothing, she said, though her heart told her otherwise. He nodded once, the kind of nod that carried respect, admiration, and perhaps the first flickers of something more. See you tomorrow, then. As she walked down the driveway, the muffled sounds of Oliver's laughter echoing behind her, Clara felt a shift within herself. What had begun as a tentative trial was becoming something real, something she hadn't expected, but couldn't imagine giving up. And for the first time in years, she looked forward to tomorrow with a sense of hope, warmth, and belonging, knowing that the small moments, the pancakes, the laughter, the quiet afternoons, were building a foundation far more valuable than any contract or offer ever could. The next morning, Clara arrived at Sunflower Cafe early, the smell of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries filling the small space. The morning rush hadn't started yet, giving her a quiet moment to breathe before the whirlwind of her life resumed. She wiped down the counter, humming softly, when her phone buzzed with a message from Sebastian. Morning, Clara. Oliver's been asking about you already. Can you come by after your shift? Breakfast at the estate. Clara smiled at the text, her heart warming. She typed a quick reply. See you then. Can't wait to see him. The cafe slowly came to life. Regulars trickled in, greeting her with smiles and small talk, and Clara found herself slipping into familiar rhythm of taking orders, pouring lattes, and delivering muffins. She enjoyed the grounded simplicity of the cafe, the way each customer's order had a predictable pattern, something she didn't have in the Wells household, where surprises were constant and unpredictability was part of the charm. Mid-morning, she handed a cappuccino to an older gentleman who always requested an extra shot of espresso and a sprinkle of cinnamon. Thanks, Clara. You're a lifesaver, he said, smiling. She returned the grin, feeling a small bubble of satisfaction. It was moments like this that reminded her why she loved this job, despite its challenges. By noon, the cafe was bustling. Clara moved from table to table, balancing trays and carefully navigating the tight space, all while keeping an eye on the clock. Soon, it would be time to leave for the Wells estate. She wiped her hands on her apron, quickly changed into a more casual outfit, and grabbed the tote bag with a small picnic she had prepared for Oliver. The drive to Beacon Hill was short but serene, the city's familiar skyline, giving way to tree-lined streets and cobblestone paths. Clara parked outside the Wells estate and took a deep breath, adjusting her tote bag. Today, they were going for a small picnic in the backyard, taking advantage of the unseasonably warm autumn weather. Oliver opened the door before she could knock, practically flying into her arms. Clara, you brought food. And muffins. Clara laughed, ruffling his hair. I brought a little something for our picnic, but you'll have to wait until we set everything up. Inside, Sebastian appeared, holding a thermos of hot chocolate. I see you two are planning a full feast, he said, smiling. His casual demeanor made him approachable, but Clara still sensed the weight of responsibility he carried, managing both his empire and a young son who needed guidance and affection in equal measure. They settled in the backyard, a modern, elegant space with stone paving, a small fountain, and well-kept flower beds. Clara spread a blanket, while Oliver enthusiastically arranged the muffins, sandwiches, and fresh fruit. The sun cast a warm glow over them, highlighting the laughter and playful chatter that filled the air. Clara, do you think we could make more dinosaur pancakes tomorrow? Oliver asked, pointing at a leaf-shaped pastry on his plate. I think we could make a whole dinosaur kingdom, Clara replied, smiling. But you'll have to help. It's a big job. Sebastian watched them quietly for a moment, sipping from his thermos. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I wasn't sure how this trial period would go. I worried that it would feel forced or awkward, but seeing you with Oliver, it feels natural." Clara met his gaze briefly. "I wasn't sure either, but he's easy to connect with. You raise him well. Sebastian, that makes a difference." He gave a small, almost shy smile. "Thank you. I want him to be happy. And you've already brought so much joy into his life." The picnic stretched into the afternoon. Oliver and Clara played simple games, tossing a small frisbee back and forth, while Sebastian read a book on a nearby lounge chair. Occasionally, he would glance up, his eyes softening at the sight of Clara laughing with his son. Eventually, Oliver grew tired and curled up on a blanket, munching on a muffin while Clara sat beside him, brushing leaves from his hair. Sebastian joined them, leaning back on one elbow. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about how quickly things have changed these past few weeks." Clara nodded, unsure how to respond. "It's been surprising," she admitted. "I didn't expect to feel so connected, so fast. I just want to make sure we're doing what's right for Oliver." He turned to her, eyes earnest. "You are, more than you know. I thought a trial would be enough to see if it worked. But seeing you here, being part of our lives, I realize that it's more than a trial. It's natural." Clara felt her cheeks warm. "It doesn't feel like a business arrangement anymore," she said softly. "It feels like family." Sebastian reached over and lightly squeezed her hand. "I think that's what it's supposed to feel like." Oliver, sensing the seriousness in the conversation, piped up with a mischievous grin. "You two are talking like grown-ups. Don't forget to play frisbee." The tension dissolved, replaced by laughter and playful banter. Clara and Sebastian spent the rest of the afternoon helping Oliver build a small fort from fallen branches and blankets, creating an impromptu kingdom in the backyard. It was simple, yet intimate, a perfect reflection of the evolving bond among them. By evening, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the Wells estate. Clara packed up their picnic items, while Oliver yawned and leaned against her side. Sebastian offered to carry him inside, and Clara felt a surge of warmth watching the father-son dynamic she had grown to admire. As she drove home later, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Clara thought about the delicate balance she had found between her own life, the café, and the Wells family. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of belonging, a connection that was genuine, unforced, and profoundly comforting. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges and small triumphs. But she was ready. For Oliver, for Sebastian, and for herself, she was ready to embrace this unexpected family she had come to love. Clara arrived at Sunflower Cafe mid-morning, the smell of fresh pastries and brewed coffee greeting her like an old friend. The tiny bell above the door jingled as she entered, and a few regulars waved, prompting her to smile. Today was different from other days, not because of her shift, but because she knew that Oliver would be waiting for her afterward. She moved behind the counter, expertly balancing orders and calls, her mind half focused on the cafe, half on the day ahead. It was comforting, this normalcy, this rhythm of taking and delivering orders. The way customers' smiles and casual conversations reminded her of simpler pleasures. By mid-morning, the cafe was bustling. Clara carried a tray of lattes and muffins to a table near the window, narrowly avoiding colliding with a delivery man stacking boxes by the counter. She chuckled to herself. Some things never change, no matter how unusual her life had become with the Wells family. After her shift ended, she quickly changed into casual clothes, grabbing a tote bag with games and snacks for Oliver. Driving to the Wells estate, she rehearsed ideas for activities with him, knowing the past weeks had already transformed their bond. Today, they planned a small science day, experimenting with safe chemical reactions in the backyard and creating miniature volcanoes. Arriving at the estate, Clara found Oliver waiting by the door, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Clara, you brought the volcano stuff?" he asked, excitement lighting his face. "I did," she said, kneeling to meet his gaze. "But only if you promise to help me clean up afterward." He groaned dramatically, but agreed with a grin. Sebastian appeared from the side hallway, dressed in a smart casual sweater and jeans, holding a thermos of hot chocolate. "I see we're continuing the experiments," he said, smiling at the two of them. Clara noted the quiet pride in his tone, a stark contrast to the serious, businesslike demeanor he displayed at work. They settled in the backyard, the elegant stone patio and neatly trimmed flower beds forming a perfect backdrop for their activities. Oliver eagerly organized the ingredients and tools, while Clara set up a protective sheet and safety glasses. Sebastian observed, occasionally stepping in to assist, but mostly letting Clara guide the experiments. "Remember, Oliver," she instructed, "we need to mix the baking soda and vinegar carefully or it'll explode too fast." "I can handle it," he insisted, eyes wide with anticipation. The first miniature eruption fizzed over the cup, splattering a little, and Oliver shrieked with delight. Clara laughed, wiping the edge of the table, while Sebastian chuckled from his chair. "You've got quite the scientist here," he remarked. The afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, experiments, and small victories. Oliver's imagination soared, building volcanoes with extra layers and pretending they were erupting on dinosaur islands. Clara admired how Sebastian engaged with him, showing patience and genuine curiosity. The dynamic between them had grown comfortable, effortless even, with Clara realizing how naturally she fit into this space. Afterward, they sat on the patio with snacks and hot chocolate, the sun beginning its descent. Oliver leaned against Clara, exhausted but happy. "Clara," he said softly, "I wish you could stay forever." She smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "I'll always be here for you, Oliver. You know that." Sebastian's gaze lingered on them, a mixture of gratitude and admiration in his eyes. "I've never seen him so relaxed with anyone outside of me," he said quietly, almost to himself. Clara looked up, catching the sincerity in his expression, as the sun dipped lower, casting warm golden light over the estate. Sebastian stood and stretched. "We should head inside before it gets too chilly," he said. He gestured for Clara and Oliver to follow. Inside, the home was as welcoming as ever, with soft music playing in the background and subtle lighting, creating a cozy ambience. They settled in the living room, where Oliver immediately opened a game from the tote bag. Clara joined him on the floor, while Sebastian sank into a chair nearby, observing the interaction with a calm attentiveness. For the first time, Clara noticed a small, quiet gesture Sebastian made, straightening a cushion here, checking that Oliver had a blanket there, small acts that revealed the depth of his care for his son. "Clara," Sebastian said after a while, breaking the comfortable silence, "I know we've agreed to take things slowly, but I want you to know something." She paused in the middle of helping Oliver place a game piece. "What's that?" "You're important to us, not just to Oliver. To me, too." His voice was low but firm, carrying weight beyond casual words. Clara's heart quickened. She had sensed a growing closeness over the past weeks, but hearing him articulate it was different. It was grounding, affirming. Oliver, sensing the shift, leaned over and whispered, "See? I told you she was the best." Clara laughed, pulling him into a quick hug. As evening settled over the estate, Clara helped Oliver get ready for bed, brushing his teeth and reading a short bedtime story. Sebastian lingered at the doorway, watching, then offered her a small, genuine smile. "Thank you for being you," he said quietly. Clara returned the smile, feeling a warmth she hadn't anticipated. "Thank you for letting me be part of this," she said, her words carrying a truth that couldn't be captured in contracts or formal agreements. Later, driving home, Claire reflected on the day. The combination of the cafe's normalcy and the Wells estate's elegance had created a balance in her life she never expected. It wasn't easy. There were responsibilities, challenges, and moments of doubt, but she felt connected in a way that went beyond mere arrangement or convenience. The city lights shimmered on the wet streets, casting reflections that reminded her of the laughter and joy she'd shared with Sebastian and Oliver. For the first time in years, she felt not only capable but valued, not just as a teacher, a waitress, or a temporary caregiver, but as someone truly part of family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, small joys, and perhaps more lessons in patience and love. But Clara felt ready. For Oliver, for Sebastian, and for herself, she was ready to continue building this life, this bond, and this unexpected family, one ordinary and extraordinary day at a time. The following morning, Clara returned to Sunflower Cafe with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. The cafe hummed with the usual mid-morning crowd, students tapping away at laptops, elderly couples sharing coffee and scones, and occasional tourists snapping photos of the quaint brick exterior. Clara moved through it all with practiced ease, her uniform apron tied neatly, her smile ready for customers who barely noticed the extraordinary weight her life now carried outside these walls. She had barely finished preparing a cappuccino when the bell above the door jingled. Looking up, she saw Oliver, grinning from ear to ear, holding a small cardboard box. "Surprise!" he shouted, waving it energetically. Clara knelt to meet him, hiding a laugh. "And what is the surprise?" "It's for you," he said, thrusting the box into her hands. Inside was a handmade card, brightly colored with glittered letter spelling. "To Clara, the best pancake mom ever." A quick glance inside revealed a collage of little drawings, dinosaurs, volcanoes, and even a stick figure labeled Dad. Clara's heart tightened. "Thank you, Oliver. This is wonderful." She hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his small arms wrap around her. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," he said firmly, "because you make everything fun and safe and happy. And Dad says you're special." She smiled, her chest swelling with affection for the boy. "Well, I'm lucky to have a student like you," she teased lightly, ruffling his hair. Just then, Sebastian stepped to the cafe door, his usual composed expression softened by a smile. He approached Clara and Oliver with a purposeful yet gentle stride. "I see I'm not the only one getting a gift today," he said, nodding at the card in Clara's hand. Oliver beamed, grabbing his father's hand. "Dad, she's the best. She made a volcano for Science Day, and we didn't even blow the kitchen up." Sebastian chuckled, squeezing his son's shoulder. "I think I need to take notes from you, Clara. You have quite the way with him." Clara felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "It's easy when he's so curious and enthusiastic," she said. Her eyes met Sebastian's for a brief moment, and the unspoken understanding between them, the trust, the growing affection, settled comfortably around her like a soft blanket. They found a small table in the corner, a quiet space that allowed them to talk, while Oliver continued sketching in his notebook. "How's your class schedule this week?" Sebastian asked, breaking the silence. Clara glanced down at her phone. "I have an evening lecture on early childhood development tomorrow, but other than that, my schedule is flexible." "Good," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I was hoping you could join us this weekend for a small brunch at my parents' house. Nothing formal, just a way for them to see you interact with Oliver outside structure activities." Clara hesitated, recalling the first awkward introductions with Sebastian's mother. "I'm a little nervous, to be honest," she admitted. Sebastian gave her a reassuring smile. "They care about Oliver. If he's happy, they'll be supportive. And I'll be there. Besides, you're wonderful with him. That speaks louder than any first impression." Oliver piped up enthusiastically. "Please, Clara, I promised Grandma I'd bring my new volcano experiment. She'll be impressed." Clara laughed. "All right, then, I'll come, but only if you promise to help me carry the volcano." The cafe's small bell jingled again, drawing a few glances from nearby customers who recognized Sebastian from local headlines. He waved politely but didn't seem fazed. Clara realized that the life she was stepping into with him wasn't only about managing a child's world or navigating high society. It was also about blending her ordinary life into extraordinary circumstances, with the same care she gave Oliver every day. After finishing their coffee, Sebastian and Clara walked Oliver toward the door. "Remember to take the envelope home with you," Sebastian reminded, handing Clara a neatly folded folder. Inside were copies of school schedules, medical notes, and a few letters from teachers about Oliver's progress. Clara glanced at the organized documents. "You're very thorough," she said, smiling. Sebastian shrugged, an almost shy expression crossing his usually confident features. "I like to know what's going on, but I trust you to guide him in ways I can't always manage." He looks up to you more than you realize. Oliver tugged at Clara's hand. Come on, we need to try the experiment at home. I already got Dad's notebook for reference. She chuckled, following him to the car. You know, I think you may be encouraging a future scientist, she said, buckling him into his seat. Or a future chef, Oliver said, winking. Because volcanoes are kind of like cooking. Sebastian laughed from the driver's seat, shaking his head. I'll leave that to you two. Just don't set off any fire alarms. The drive to the estate was quiet, comfortable. Clara watched Oliver chatter excitedly about his plans, the way he intertwined his love for science with little observations about his day. Sebastian occasionally joined in, asking questions and teasing small facts out of Oliver, but mostly he allowed Clara to guide their conversation. It was a delicate balance she had come to appreciate, the way he gave her authority, without undermining her role. At the estate, they settled in the sunroom, where natural light poured over a small table covered with baking soda, vinegar, and clay models of volcanoes. Oliver immediately set to work, eyes bright with anticipation. Clara guided him through each step, correcting little mistakes and encouraging his creative additions. Sebastian observed from the side, his expression thoughtful. You make this look effortless, he said softly. Clara glanced at him, catching the sincerity in his tone. I'm just lucky he's such a willing student, she replied lightly, though her heart quickened at the acknowledgement. The first eruption fizzed perfectly, sending a gentle stream of foamy lava over the clay crater. Oliver cheered, pumping his fists in delight. It's perfect, just like last time, Clara. Sebastian smiled, watching the dynamic between them. He realized that the girl who had once spilled coffee on him in a downtown café had now seamlessly become an integral part of their lives. Not just a caretaker, not just a friend, but something far more essential, a bridge between the past and the future for both him and Oliver. As the sun began to set, casting warm light across the room, Clara helped Oliver clean up the remnants of their experiments. The laughter and chatter that filled the afternoon left a comfortable, lingering warmth. Sebastian joined them, helping to wipe down the table and gather supplies, a quiet partner in the small domestic scene. By the time dinner was served, a simple, cozy meal that Oliver insisted on helping prepare, Clara felt a profound sense of belonging. It was subtle, yet undeniable. She belonged here, in this family, not through contracts or obligation, but through choice, affection, and trust. Later, after Oliver was tucked in, Sebastian and Clara lingered in the sunroom, the soft glow of the lamps creating an intimate ambience. He poured them both a glass of wine, setting his aside carefully as he looked at her. You know, he said quietly, I never imagined I'd meet someone who could step into our lives so naturally. Clara smiled, a soft blush on her cheeks. Neither did I, she admitted, but I think we're figuring it out. Sebastian nodded, his gaze steady. Yes, we are, and I'm grateful for you, for Oliver, and for this, us. Clara reached for his hand, entwining their fingers. Me too, she whispered. Me too. The quiet moment stretched into the evening, filled with unspoken promises, gentle laughter, and the knowledge that, despite the unconventional path, they were becoming a family in the truest sense of the word. The weekend arrived, crisp and sunny, a welcome reprieve from the gray drizzle that had dominated the city all week. Clara found herself standing at the grand gates of the Wells estate, a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy tightening in her chest. She smoothed her simple, elegant dress one last time and inhaled deeply. This was the moment she'd been dreading and looking forward to, the first formal introduction to Sebastian's family outside the controlled environment of school events and quiet afternoons with Oliver. The driveway stretched out before her, lined with towering oaks and neatly trimmed hedges. A black sedan gleamed under the morning sun, Sebastian stepping out gracefully, a suit impeccably tailored. His presence was calm yet commanding, a contrast to the butterflies Clara felt fluttering in her stomach. Ready? He asked, offering a hand that felt familiar and grounding. Clara took it, smiling nervously. As I'll ever be. Oliver, of course, was bouncing on his toes, impatient and excited. Come on, Clara. Grandma said she wants to see my volcano. And I promised Mom I'd show her the baking soda trick. Clara chuckled, letting him pull her along. All right, little scientist, lead the way. They entered the estate, greeted immediately by the grandeur of the Wells home. Polished marble floors reflected the sunlight streaming through tall windows, and the walls were lined with portraits of past generations, each one a silent reminder of legacy and expectation. Clara felt a flicker of intimidation, but she reminded herself that she had Oliver's happiness and Sebastian's quiet support on her side. At the top of the staircase, Mrs. Wells, Sebastian's mother, descended with elegance and warmth, her eyes scanning Clara with curiosity. She paused briefly, taking in Clara's modest attire, the nervous but genuine smile, and the way she held Oliver's hand like it was second nature. "Clara," Mrs. Wells said, extending her hand, "it's lovely to finally meet you properly." Clara shook it gently. "Thank you, Mrs. Wells. It's a pleasure to meet you, too." Mrs. Wells' gaze softened as she looked at Oliver. "And Oliver, my dear, you look positively radiant today. Did you bring your experiment?" "Yes, Grandma," he exclaimed, running ahead to retrieve a small, carefully packed volcano kit. "Clara helped me practice." Mrs. Wells nodded approvingly. "I see. Very good." Her eyes flicked back to Clara. "It's wonderful to see someone who can inspire him so easily." Clara felt a blush rise to her cheeks, but held her composure. "Oliver is full of curiosity. I just help him channel it," she said modestly. Sebastian joined them, placing a reassuring hand on Clara's back. "Clara's been a big part of our routine," he said simply. "We're glad she's here today." The rest of the afternoon was filled with polite introductions, careful conversations, and subtle observations from the Wells family. Clara found herself navigating the room with practiced ease, smiling, nodding, and laughing when appropriate. She was aware of every subtle glance, every whispered question about her background. Yet she remained steady, calm, and engaged, proving herself capable without overstepping. Oliver, meanwhile, was in his element, showing off his volcano experiment, answering questions with infectious enthusiasm, and happily explaining the chemical reactions in vivid detail. Mrs. Wells was clearly impressed, leaning in to ask detailed questions, and Clara found herself relaxing as she watched the warmth in the room grow. At one point, Mrs. Wells pulled Clara aside. "You have a natural way with him," she said softly. "It's rare to see someone who can guide a child without overshadowing the parent. Sebastian is fortunate." Clara smiled, touched by the sincerity. "Thank you. I just care about him and about making sure he's happy." Her words seemed to linger in the air, and Clara felt a sense of belonging she hadn't expected. The small domestic victories, the laughter, the experiments, the careful nurturing, were noticed and appreciated. Sebastian, noticing the interaction, stepped closer. "I think she's remarkable, too," he said quietly, only for Clara to hear. His presence was a steady anchor, a silent assurance that she was seen and valued, not just as a caretaker, but as a person in her own right. The afternoon drew on, filled with more laughter, shared stories, and gentle teasing. Clara found herself sharing anecdotes about Oliver's school adventures, moments that highlighted his character, his humor, and his intelligence. She carefully avoided mentioning her own worries or insecurities, instead letting the focus remain on the boys she had come to adore like family. Dinner was served in a more intimate setting, a long table with elegant settings and subtle floral arrangements. The conversation was lighter, punctuated with small jokes, familial teasing, and Oliver's occasional bursts of excitement about his latest discovery. Clara found herself laughing more freely than she had expected, the tension of her initial anxiety melting away in the warmth of genuine connection. Sebastian sat beside her, occasionally whispering small reassurances or nodding at her comments to the family. The subtle partnership between them was clear, a shared understanding of respect, trust, and growing affection. Clara felt a thrill of contentment, knowing that the path she had feared would be awkward or impossible was instead unfolding beautifully. After dessert, they moved to the sunroom, where Oliver immediately wanted to demonstrate a final experiment, a small but impressive chemical reaction designed to explode safely in a colorful foam display. Clara guided him carefully, while Sebastian and his parents watched with fascination. When the final eruption fizzed perfectly, Oliver cheered and Clara felt a warm pride fill her chest. She looked around at the family. Sebastian's proud smile, his parents' impressed expressions, and Oliver's wide-eyed joy, and realized something profound. She belonged here. Not by obligation, not by circumstance, but by the connection she had cultivated through patience, care, and genuine love. As the evening wound down, Sebastian offered to drive Clara home. "You did wonderfully today," he said, his tone warm but filled with quiet pride. Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you for everything. You're a part of our lives now," he said simply. "And Oliver is lucky to have you." She glanced at him, her heart fluttering with emotion. "I'm the lucky one," she whispered. The ride home was quiet, filled with comfortable silence and shared satisfaction. Clara knew that the weekend had marked a turning point, a moment when she had transitioned from the outside world into a place where she was seen, valued, and most importantly, accepted as family. By the time she arrived at her apartment, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The challenges ahead, balancing work, school, and this new role in Oliver's life, were still present, but the foundation had been laid. She had built trust, earned respect, and formed connections that promised stability, love, and belonging. As she settled into bed that night, her thoughts drifted to Sebastian and Oliver, to the warmth and laughter they had shared, and she realized that her life was no longer defined by uncertainty or fear. It was defined by choice, connection, and the quiet but unshakable bonds of family. And for the first time in a long while, Clara slept peacefully, confident in the knowledge that she had found a place where she truly belonged. The following week brought a mixture of anticipation and quiet tension. Clara had grown used to her new routine with Oliver and Sebastian, but today felt different. Today, Oliver's school was hosting a family day, where parents and guardians were invited to participate in activities, watch performances, and meet the other families. Clara had been invited to attend, not as a stranger, not as a temporary caretaker, but as a meaningful part of Oliver's life. As she stood in the school lobby, adjusting her scarf and smoothing her dress, she felt a flurry of nerves. Would the other parents understand her role? Would they judge her for not being Oliver's biological mother? She glanced at Oliver, who was bouncing with excitement, practically vibrating with energy. "Clara, over here," he called, waving enthusiastically. "I want to show you my class's project." She hurried to him, tried to match his enthusiasm. "All right, lead the way, little scientist," she said with a smile. The classroom buzzed with activity. Parents were mingling, children were showing off crafts, and teachers were coordinating small presentations. Oliver proudly guided Clara to his table, where a carefully constructed diorama of a volcano, complete with painted lava and tiny clay dinosaurs, awaited. "Isn't it amazing?" Oliver asked. "I told Dad, and he said I was super smart, but I think you helped me make it even better." Clara crouched down beside him, examining the details. "You did a fantastic job, Oliver. You're creative and precise. Look at these details. And yes, I helped a tiny bit, but all the credit is yours." Oliver beamed and, without hesitation, whispered, "Mom, can we tell everyone you're my mom?" Clara froze, her heart lurching. The word mom had slipped so naturally from his lips, so full of trust and affection, that it sent a rush of emotion through her. She looked down at him, seeing the earnestness and hope shining in his eyes. Sebastian, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped forward, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he knelt beside Clara, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You'll handle this," he murmured softly. "Just be honest, be yourself." Clara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She looked around at the parents gathering near the projects, some glancing curiously, some exchanging polite nods, and then back at Oliver. "All right, Oliver," she said gently. "Let's do it your way. You introduce me." He puffed out his chest and cleared his throat dramatically. "Hi, everyone. This is my mom, Clara. She helped me with my volcano project, and she's awesome." A hush fell over the room. Some parents blinked in surprise. Others smiled politely. Clara's stomach twisted with anxiety, but she leaned down to Oliver's level and whispered, "Thank you for saying that, honey. That means a lot to me." Oliver grinned. "I mean it. You're the best. Sebastian's presence next to her steadied Clara. He gave her a small, encouraging nod. Then, quietly, he said, "Go ahead and answer questions if they have any. You're part of this, and they should know it." Clara took a deep breath, stepping slightly forward as a parent raised a hand. "How long have you been helping Oliver with school projects?" the mother asked, her tone curious but not unkind. "A few months," Clara replied honestly. "We've been working together regularly, and it's been wonderful to see his curiosity and creativity grow. I care about Oliver, and I'm honored to support him in any way I can." Another parent leaned in. "You're not his biological mom?" Clara shook her head. "No, I'm not, but that doesn't change the bond we've formed. He trusts me, and I'm committed to being a consistent and caring presence in his life." Some nods of understanding came from the group, and the tension in the room eased. Oliver's classmates clustered around, excitedly explaining elements of their projects, while Clara stayed close to them, encouraging and answering questions. Later, during the performances, Oliver tugged her hand. "Clara, come sit with me. Dad's sitting back there, but I want you here." Clara laughed softly, following him to the front row. Sebastian settled a few seats away, allowing her to share the space fully with Oliver. She watched him perform with pride, his little voice strong and confident, the culmination of months of encouragement, guidance, and trust. After the final performance, parents and children mingle for refreshments. Oliver tugged Clara to a quiet corner, his eyes shining with excitement. "I told everyone you're my mom, and they all said it's cool." Clara crouched down to hug him. "Thank you, Oliver. That was very brave of you." He beamed. "I know it's true. You make me happy, and Dad makes me happy. So that means you're my mom now, even if it's different from other moms." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, touched by his innocent logic and unconditional love. "Different can be wonderful," she whispered. Sebastian approached, smiling warmly. "You did beautifully," he said. "Oliver's proud, and so am I." Clara's gaze shifted to him, feeling a swell of emotion. "It feels right, being part of this, of him, of your family," she admitted softly. He took her hand gently. "I'm glad. We've come a long way, Clara, and it's only the beginning." Oliver, noticing their hands intertwined, grinned. "See, Dad? I told you. She's my mom." Sebastian chuckled, ruffling Oliver's hair. "Yes, I see that now," he said, his voice tinged with awe and affection. Clara looked at the two of them, her heart full. This was real. Not a contract, not a transaction, but family built on trust, love, and shared lives. And in that moment, she knew she would do everything she could to nurture this bond, to honor Oliver's trust, and to continue building something beautiful with Sebastian. As they left the school, Oliver's hand firmly in hers, Clara felt a sense of belonging she had never known. She was no longer an outsider, no longer a temporary figure. She was part of something lasting, something meaningful. She was Oliver's mom. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with love, laughter, and the unshakable certainty that they would face it together. The weekend arrived with crisp autumn air, perfect for a family outing. Clara found herself adjusting the straps of her bag as she followed Sebastian and Oliver out of their apartment and into the city streets. Boston was alive with the hustle of Saturday shoppers, couples strolling hand in hand, and children darting around with oversized balloons. Sebastian had suggested a visit to Waterfront, a place where Oliver could explore, feed the ducks, and enjoy the boats docking at the pier. Clara had agreed immediately. She loved the idea of a simple, quiet day away from the formalities of home, offices, and responsibilities. As they approached the waterfront, Oliver ran ahead, his laughter echoing across the docks. "Look, Mom, the swans are back. Let's go feed them first." Clara smiled, her heart swelling at the way he had already started calling her mom naturally. "All right, little adventurer. Lead the way." Sebastian followed behind, his hands tucked into the pockets of his coat, his eyes scanning the harbor and then settling on Clara with an unreadable expression. She knew he was weighing every moment, every word, every gesture with the same meticulous attention he applied to board meetings, but now it was personal, emotional. They reached the Swan Pond. Oliver dug into his backpack, and pulled out a small container of bird feed. "Okay, Mom, you sprinkle here, Dad sprinkle there, and I'll do this side." Clara knelt beside him, smiling as he demonstrated. "I've got it. See? You're teaching me." "Exactly. You have to learn the correct technique." Oliver's tone was mock serious, making Clara laugh. Sebastian stood behind them, arms crossed, observing quietly but with a softness in his gaze that Clara hadn't expected. After the swans had waddled away, satisfied and slightly aggressive in their feasting, Oliver tugged at Clara's hand. "Come on, I want to show you the boats." As they walked along the docks, Clara noticed how naturally the trio functioned together. Oliver chattered about the names of the boats, the types of sails, and the mechanics of docking. Sebastian answered questions with patience, even explaining the basic principles of sailing to his curious son. Clara added little tidbits here and there, stories from her own childhood about summer camps and lake trips. Eventually, they reached a small café on the pier, modern and sleek yet welcoming, with outdoor seating overlooking the water. Sebastian gestured to the tables. "Shall we have a break?" "Coffee for me. Cocoa for Oliver. Something for you?" Clara shook her head with a laugh. "No coffee today. Just a ginger tea, please." They chose a table near the railing, where the wind carried the smell of salt water and the distant sounds of gulls. Oliver immediately ordered a hot chocolate, complete with whipped cream and sprinkles, and jabbered about his plan to name a toy boat he had in mind after his favorite dinosaur. Clara watched him, marveling at the ease with which he spoke, the confidence he had developed over the past few months. She thought of how tentative he had been at first, how wary, and she felt a quiet pride at the progress he had made. Sebastian, noticing her gaze, reached across the table, his hand covering hers briefly. "He's doing well," he said softly, almost as if he needed reassurance himself. Clara nodded, squeezing his hand. "He is, and you've done a lot of that too. He's lucky to have you." Sebastian's lips twitched in the hint of a smile. "We're all lucky," he admitted. Their drinks arrived, and they lingered over the warm beverages, the chatter of the cafe forming a gentle background hum. Oliver was halfway through his chocolate when he suddenly looked up at Clara. "Mom, can we sit outside for a bit? I want to feel the wind while we sip." Clara nodded, lifting her cup. "Of course. Let's take it all in." They moved to a bench overlooking the water. Oliver leaned against Clara, the small boy radiating warmth and trust. Sebastian stood slightly behind, his hands resting on the bench, his posture relaxed but vigilant. "Do you think we could rent a small sailboat one day?" Oliver asked, eyes wide with excitement. "I want to try sailing with Mom and Dad." Clara laughed softly. "That sounds like an adventure. I think we can make it happen." Sebastian's gaze softened as he watched the sun. "Yes, we'll do it together. But we start small, maybe with lessons first." Oliver groaned dramatically. "Lessons are boring. I just want to sail." Clara ruffled his hair. "You'll enjoy it more than you think. Learning is part of the adventure, too." The afternoon stretched on. They walked along the pier, feeding the gulls, pointing out boats, and occasionally stop and take photos. Sebastian occasionally let Clara take the lead in conversation, letting her interact with Oliver, laugh with him, and offer guidance naturally, without the shadow of a corporate hierarchy looming over them. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Oliver tugged at Clara's sleeve. "Mom, let's take a picture together, so I can show Dad and tell everyone at school about my new mom and dad." Clara smiled, wrapping an arm around him. Sebastian stepped closer, draping his arm over both of them, creating a perfect frame. "Say cheese," Clara said. Oliver's grin was infectious, and for a moment, the world outside the pier didn't exist. Cameras, CEOs, business deals, all irrelevant. They were simply a family, together, laughing, and present in the golden light of a late autumn day. Later, as they walked back toward the car, Sebastian fell into step beside Clara. "Today was good," he said, glancing at her. Clara smiled softly. "It was. I think we needed this. A day that isn't about schedules or contracts or social appearances." Sebastian nodded. "Yes, just us. Just family." Oliver, holding Clara's hand tightly, looked up at both of them. "I think my friends at school would be jealous. They want my mom to be as cool as you." Clara laughed, ruffling his hair again. "I'm honored, Oliver. Very honored." Sebastian glanced down at her, his eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and affection. "Clara, thank you for being here, for being part of our lives." Clara squeezed his hand in response. "Thank you for trusting me, and for letting me be a part of Oliver's life." They arrived at the car, Oliver still chattering about boats and dinosaurs, completely at ease. As Sebastian helped him into the back seat, Clara caught a glance from him, a look that said more than words ever could. They were building something real, grounded in love, trust, and patience. And Clara, walking around the driver's side, felt an unshakable certainty. This was only the beginning of their story, one she was ready to embrace fully, with both hands and heart open wide. The crisp autumn air carried the faint scent of fallen leaves and roasted coffee from a nearby café. Ellie stood on the terrace of the public garden, adjusting the simple but elegant emerald green dress she had chosen for the occasion. The sunlight glinted off the gold in the pond below, reflecting the same warmth she felt in her chest. Harrison appeared beside her, impeccably dressed yet somehow relaxed, as if the powerful CEO persona had been set aside for the day. He offered his hand, and she took it, fingers intertwining naturally, no awkwardness, no formalities. Matthew ran ahead, laughing, his little boots scuffing the gravel path, holding a small box with a grin that mirrored his father's. "You ready?" Harrison asked quietly, leaning slightly toward her. Ellie nodded, taking a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." Matthew darted back to them, hopping on the tips of his toes. "Dad, you're supposed to be down on one knee," he said, waving the small box. Ellie laughed at the boy's insistence, the sound like music that filled the terrace. Harrison smiled, the faintest shadow of exasperation crossing his face before he knelt gracefully on one knee. Ellie's eyes widened as Matthew placed the box in Harrison's hands. He lifted the lid to reveal a delicate emerald ring, surrounded by diamonds that sparkled like tiny stars. "Ellie Morgan," Harrison said, his voice steady but softer than she had ever heard it. "A year ago, I made a business proposition that was cold and transactional. But today, I ask you something different. Will you be my wife? Not as part of a contract, but because I love you, because you become our family, and because I cannot imagine a future without you by our side." Tears pricked Ellie's eyes as Matthew clambered onto her side. "Say yes, please," he whispered. "I've already told my teacher we're going to be a real family, and I don't want to be wrong." Ellie laughed through the tears, heart swelling as she looked at both of them, the boy who had stolen her heart before she realized it, and the man who had surprised her at every turn. "Yes," she said, voice trembling. "Yes to both of you." Matthew cheered, throwing his small arms around her waist, nearly toppling her. Ellie caught him, laughing and crying at the same time, while Harrison rose and slipped the ring onto her finger with a gentle precision, his hand lingering just long enough to convey unspoken promises. They stayed like that for a moment, a trio bound by love, trust, and the small, unexpected miracles of life. Then Matthew tugged at Ellie's hand. "Now you have to help me make dinosaur pancakes for breakfast tomorrow," he declared. Ellie smiled, shaking her head in mock exasperation. "Fine, but only if Dad helps." Harrison chuckled, pulling her close. "You're stuck with us," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Ellie rested her head against his shoulder, letting the warmth of the moment wash over her. Over the next few weeks, they quietly planned a small, intimate wedding. Nothing grandiose or ostentatious. Just family, close friends, and little rituals that made a house a home. The ceremony was held in a sunlit garden, with Matthew proudly carrying the rings on a tiny velvet pillow, his smile uncontainable. Ellie walked down the aisle, not to music, but to the soft laughter of her new family, feeling completely herself for the first time in years. Harrison's eyes never left hers, full of awe and admiration. As they exchanged vows, Ellie realized how far they'd come. From spilled coffee and accidental meetings to a true partnership built on respect, care, and love. Matthew tugged at her dress afterward. "Mom," he said, using the word with new ease, "can we go home now? I want pancakes." Ellie laughed, kissing his forehead. Yes, sweetheart. Pancakes first, then adventures. That evening, as they sat around the small dining table in the Wells home, a simple but elegant dinner prepared by Harrison himself, Ellie felt a sense of contentment that she hadn't known she was capable of. They shared stories, jokes, and quiet glances that spoke volumes without words. Matthew chattered about his day at school, Harrison teased him gently, and Ellie listened, feeling the weight of happiness settle comfortably on her shoulders. Later, as she looked out the window at the city skyline, Harrison joined her silently, wrapping an arm around her waist. You know, he said softly, I never imagined that a spilled cup of coffee could change my life this much. Ellie leaned into him, resting her head on his chest. Sometimes the biggest mistakes turn out to be the best things that ever happened. Harrison kissed the top of her head. Yes, and sometimes the most ordinary people end up becoming the most extraordinary parts of your life. Ellie smiled, thinking of Matthew of the café, of every small moment that had led her here. We're going to be a good team, she said. We already are, Harrison replied. And as the city lights flickered in the distance, casting a soft glow over the home they had built together, Ellie realized that the extraordinary life she had always hoped for wasn't a fairy tale. It was right here, with the boy who needed her and the man who had trusted her, in a home filled with love, laughter, and the small, perfect chaos of family life. The spilled coffee seemed a lifetime ago, yet it led to the most unexpected, wonderful chapter of her life. And now, finally, the three of them could begin the rest of their lives together, not bound by contracts or arrangements, but by the love and trust they had earned and would continue to nurture every single day.